Good morning. My name is Dan Quinn. I'm a master's student under Dr. Kurt Steinke. Kurt unfortunately couldn't be here today, so he gave me the keys and trusted me enough to run this soil fertility spot. But today I'm going to kind of highlight the research I've been doing for my master's. I'm in my second year of my master's, and this study behind us here that's signed is my research that I've been working on the last couple years. And this is replicated as well up in Frankenmuth, Saginaw Valley Research and Extension Center up there. Down here it's on red wheat, Sunburst is the variety, and up there it's on Jupiter or white wheat. So before I get into this study here, I look across, and it's kind of a small wheat field, but we actually have 8 different trials out here. If you look at that map down there, you can see the different trials that we have out here. And I want to point out that not all the studies are funded by Michigan Wheat. My master's study is funded by Michigan Wheat, so I appreciate that, getting the checkoff dollars in order to give me an opportunity to receive my master's degree. But you can see kind of down that left corner, Dow AgriSciences. We do a lot of company trials, so Dow AgriSciences has a study down there. If you look all the way down at the right corner there, Mosaic, which is we do a lot of work for Mosaic. It's a very big fertilizer company. They have their high management trials down there. We have a seeding rate study, manganese study, a sulfur study, and a boron study. So we get a lot of questions year after year, and sulfur is one of the biggest ones. Probably every meeting I go to, what do you think about sulfur? And Kurt gets the same thing. What do you think about sulfur? So that's the first year of that sulfur study, looking at different rates of sulfur. We get questions about boron, questions about manganese, and then as well, that's our second year of that seeding rate study as well. So a lot of different questions we get. We try to translate those into research trials. And this is only one location. We actually have 15 different studies this year. It's the most our program has ever had. So it keeps us busy throughout the year. We have a lot of wheat research out there. It's very interesting. So I'm going to kind of jump into what I've been working on the last couple years for my master's degree. And this study is unique in the fact that we're looking at intensely managed wheat in kind of a different light, a different way to look at it. And the way we do that is utilizing what is called an omission plot design. So if you're not familiar with an omission design, I'll kind of walk you through it. But if you look at the first plot, this gentleman standing next to this sign here, that plot has all 6 inputs that we're looking at. So we're looking at a urease inhibitor, a nitrification inhibitor, plant growth regulator, foliar micronutrients, fungicide, and then an increased nitrogen rate, so a 20% increase in N rate. So that plot right there is what we call the enhanced plot, or the enhanced strategy. So that's kind of the kitchen sink plot. It's got everything on it, all 6 inputs. And as you go down this study, we take each one away. So that's part of the omission design. We're taking each one by itself away. So this plot right here has got everything but that urease inhibitor. So it's got all 5 inputs, take away that urease inhibitor. And you go down, you got 5 inputs, take away that nitrification inhibitor. So we're trying to pinpoint what is that wheat response when I take away each input by itself. So we also do that, we kind of flip it and do it the other way. And as you go down, there's what we call the traditional strategy. So traditional strategy is plots that only have a base rate of N. So 90 pounds of nitrogen is our base rate of N. So as you go down, we're adding each input by itself. So first plot, just 90 pounds of N, that's it. Go down to the next plot, urease inhibitor by itself. Go down to the next plot, nitrification inhibitor by itself. So what we're trying to do is really pinpoint what is each individual input's response. What is that wheat response to each individual input? There's a lot of wheat grown, a lot of high yielding wheat grown in this state, and very intensely managed wheat grown in this state. And a lot of it is there's many inputs applied on that wheat. So we want to look at, yes, you can apply 6 inputs. We got good yield out of 6 inputs, but maybe only 1 or 2 is doing all the work. So we're trying to figure out which inputs do the most of the work. And we chose each of these inputs. We're soil fertility, so we chose a lot of urease, nitrification inhibitors, foliar micronutrients. But we also chose fungicide and PGR. They're very popular, very commonly used. That's the reason behind why we chose each of those inputs. So I'm going to kind of dive into the results we saw in my first year. And once again, it was only 1 year. We're going to take yield results from another year. But as you can see, if you guys can see down this way, you can tell exactly which plot we took away that palisade from. So that wheat is much higher, much taller, and that makes sense. But as we went down, where we took away that foliar micronutrient, that wheat was much higher again, and that wheat did have a PGR in it. So what we're seeing, we saw it down here, we saw it up in Frankenmuth, is that we mixed the PGR with that foliar micronutrient together, applied them at feet 6 or jointing stage. And what we're finding is when they're combined together, that wheat's about 5 inches plus shorter than wheat that has PGR with just a regular NIS. So that foliar micronutrient we use is a Maxon product, the Winfield product. So we kind of contribute that when that PGR is with that foliar micronutrient, that adjuvant in that foliar micronutrient is doing such a good job that wheat is uptaking more of that PGR than with just a regular NIS. So if you have a variety that's much taller, it's something to consider. You can maybe mix a foliar micronutrient with an adjuvant, high-end adjuvant like that one does, maybe get a much bigger response from a PGR. But this is Sunburst. Sunburst is one of the shortest stature red wheat varieties around. So that's why we haven't seen big responses from PGR. We actually kind of thought last year it was so dry, our wheat was so short, that when we tank mixed the foliar micronutrient with the PGR, that wheat got so short that it almost hindered yield a little bit. But in the past, we've worked with varieties such as Red Dragon, which are almost twice as high as this variety, and they're very prone to lodging. That's definitely when we're seeing big PGR responses. Another input that we've seen good results from was Presario. Last year we had a big stripe rust outbreak. Sunburst is a moderately resistant variety to stripe rust, but it still attacked the whole field. So what's interesting about that with Presario is we're applying it at flowering, trying to target that Fusarium head blight. What we actually saw is very good protection on that flag leaf from stripe rust. So you can, into consideration when you're applying that Presario, we didn't have any head scab, not even a sign of head scab last year because it was so dry. But we got very, very good control of stripe rust on that flag leaf. Even when you waited all the way up into flowering with that Presario, it did a very good job and actually increased that wheat yield by about 11 bushel. Another input, we saw kind of the one sole input that we saw a correlation or a similarity between down here on red wheat as well as up north of Frankenmuth on white wheat was the increased nitrogen rate. And what's interesting about that is that in the increased nitrogen rate, the biggest response we saw was when we took it away from the enhanced treatment. So you had plots with 6 inputs, but you dropped that nitrogen rate down. When we dropped that nitrogen rate down, we actually lost about anywhere from 9 to 15 bushels per acre. And that's interesting because we did not see that when we added it by itself on the traditional side. So we're seeing in a year like last year, when you have a whole bunch of inputs on your wheat, what we're seeing is you kind of need that extra nitrogen for all those inputs. So if you have an intensely managed wheat crop, you're utilizing a lot of inputs, you will most likely see a benefit from that increase, 20% or higher increase in N rate. And we only saw that on the enhanced plots, and we did not see that at all on the traditional plots.
So how much total nitrogen would that be then?
So down here, our base N rate was 90 pounds of N per acre. It's based off a lot of N rate trials we do, and then we increased it by 20%, so 108 pounds per acre was our high N. And then up in Frankenmuth area, we do N rate trials up there as well, and our base N rate was 120 pounds of N per acre. It's a much higher yielding environment. We're basing it off a lot of our N rate trials, and 20% increase equaled out to about 144 pounds per acre. 144 pounds of N per acre. So we've done N rate trials up there. Had questions before, anywhere from 120 to 160. I think 160 pounds of N up that way was our highest yielder, but we didn't see an economic benefit from going past 120 pounds. And then down here, anywhere from 90 to 100 pounds has kind of been the sweet spot for our wheat on campus. Yep. We also looked at enhanced plots by themselves. So the enhanced strategy, the plots that had everything on them, versus the traditional plots that had only a base end rate, or 90 pounds and 120 pounds of end. And what we seen down here last year, it was kind of a unique year. That traditional plots with that only base end rate and not all the extra inputs actually out-yielded the enhanced plots. But once again, it was 1 year. This variety's short. We didn't see any lodging. We didn't have any end loss conditions. We had stripe rust, but we didn't have big head scab pressure. We didn't have any micronutrient deficiencies. And up on Frankenmuth, the enhanced plots only out-yielded the traditional plots by about 2 bushels per acre. And up there, the wheat was much cleaner. There wasn't even a speck of disease on that wheat. We didn't have any lodging. Jupiter is a short stature variety as well. So we didn't have any lodging. We didn't have end loss conditions following that nitrogen application. We didn't have, once again, no disease, no micronutrient deficiencies, and so on and so forth. So we're hoping this year we can see even more responses from inputs, but what we've been seeing from the weather is that it's kind of deja vu of last year, where we had rain early and then the faucet shut off. So a lot of the plots look a lot like what they did last year. So whether that translates, we'll definitely post our yield data from this year. Our website's soil.msu.edu. We post all of our yield results on that website. We have 5 different crops we do research on, so our yield results are posted on that website with extension articles and so on and so forth. So the yield results will be available following this season. With that, I can take any questions about my study. I'll also probably touch base on some of the other studies we have out here. I can take any questions you guys have. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the sulfur? I know that, like you said, that's been a pretty hot topic lately.
Yep. So this year, this is the first year of this sulfur study, where we utilize gypsum. So the reason why we use gypsum is because we do fertility work and we don't want a nitrogen component like an AMS, so on and so forth. So we don't want that nitrogen component. Gypsum, calcium sulfate, that sulfur is readily available. We've been seeing very good sulfur responses this year. The plants were much greener, healthier throughout the growing season. We're definitely seeing a sulfur response. Whether that translates to yield, we'll see. But another thing I want to point out is that this wheat field is following corn silage, which I know is not a common practice. Up in Frankenmuth, we are following soybeans. But with corn silage, what we're finding we've followed soybeans in the past, and what we found with a lot of fertility work, especially nitrogen work, a lot of those soybeans like to have nitrogen hanging around, and it kind of throws off a lot of our results when we're trying to push it to the limit to see what those nitrogen results are. We do have a lot of other trials following soybeans, but this trial specifically was following corn silage. The corn silage was able to get taken off, and we could plant in a timely manner. Up in Frankenmuth, that wheat was actually planted about 3 weeks after down here. This was planted about September 23rd, and then the wheat up there was middle of October. So that's one factor. Corn is much more responsive to sulfur. That's kind of why we're seeing those sulfur responses. Whether that translates to yield or not, it's the first year of that sulfur study, and we will continue it on into further years.
How many tons of the acre did you put on?
So from a pound standpoint, we went from 25 pounds, 50 pounds per acre, and then 100 pounds per acre of sulfur.
Was that at planting?
It was at green up. Yeah. Yep.
So that right there is the sulfur study?
This is not. So
next one over there?
So the sulfur study is actually kind of way back in that far right corner. If you look at the map.
Oh, I see. That's
so
the whole,
yeah, each of our trials are replicated 4 times. So each plot, people look at small plot research. These plots are replicated 4 times throughout the study. So it's actually comes out to be a pretty large strip. So we can definitely take that into consideration. But the sulfur is back in that far corner. Any other questions? I do want to point out the seeding rate study. If anybody has any time later, it's a pretty interesting study. We went down to 250,000 seeds per acre all the way to 2 million seeds per acre. And what we saw is that the 1 million seeds per acre was the highest yielder last year. It was around 85 bushel. What was pretty interesting, the 250,000 seeds per acre, if you have a chance, it looks really ugly. It kind of looks, it's really sporadic, and the plants look like mini bushes, but the heads are huge. And actually, last year it yielded about 68 bushel, which is pretty impressive for 250,000 seeds per acre. So, and actually we saw a yield decrease when we went past 1.5 million. Getting up to 2 million, you actually see yield decreases. So that's something we're going to take into consideration for future research on down the road.
Was that all planted early?
It was all planted the same day, September. Yep.
So out of your treatments here, what do you think is, based off what you're finding so far, what's your biggest player or biggest input?
So down here, the best plot was fungicide by itself. And then up in Frankenmuth, the best plot was just the base end rate by itself. And it was 1 year. It definitely depends year after year after year because of environmental conditions. But down here we had stripe rust. We got a big bump from that fungicide. It was the most profitable plot. And then up there, once again, just the base end rate of 120 pounds, just because we didn't have adverse conditions throughout the year. But we'll see what happens this year. Hopefully we get some differences as well.
Has there been any work done with like split nitrogen applications on wheat?
Yep. Yeah, we do a lot of work with that. My boss Kurt actually put an extension article out on our website. So, on our website and MSU Extension, what we found, we compiled all of our data looking at green up applications, split applications, and then wait until Feeks 5, Feeks 6. Compiled all that data year after year after year, and what we found is it really doesn't matter when you put your end rate down. You can put it on your green up, you could split it, or you could wait until Feeks 5, Feeks 6 and still have the same yield. The downside of applying it early on green up is that you definitely a much higher risk of torrential rains coming and wash a lot of that end rate. But all the data we've taken, multiple years, we've seen it really doesn't matter if you put it on at once, split it, or as long as you're hitting it before that Feeks 5, Feeks 6.
What do you think of ESN? Is it worth the extra money?
ESN is not for wheat. The reason for that, we did a lot of ESN work in the past, is it doesn't release fast enough for wheat. Wheat kind of has that peak uptake time around Feeks 6 area, and a lot of times what we've seen, and a lot of other universities have seen, is that nitrogen just isn't releasing fast enough for that wheat. ESN works well with other crops such as corn and so on and so forth, but with wheat we don't recommend ESN at all. But we have research as well. Coke is another company we do a lot of work with, looking at Super U. We've got good results off Super U, which is a urease and nitrification inhibitor. That I can take any other questions you guys may have. I told you I told you to keep it shorter than everybody else so you guys can get lunch first. Thank you.